Hi everyone, welcome to the first webinar in our KYC Beginner to Pro for Merchant Acquirers series, Know Your Customer, Anatomy of a Bad Actor. This session has been pre-recorded, but our speakers are available via live chat for any questions you have in real time, so feel free to reach out during the presentation. I'm going to give a few more minutes for those who are still logging in, so please sit tight and then we'll get things going. Hi again, everyone. For those who are just joining us, welcome to the first webinar in our summer series, KYC Beginner to Pro for Merchant Acquirers. If you're here for the first session, Know Your Customer, Anatomy of a Bad Actor, then you're in the right place. My name is Jessica, and I'll be moderating for the next 30 minutes. Before we begin, I'll cover a few housekeeping items. In your GoToWebinar panel, you will find a copy of our presentation deck and links to some additional resources. I'd like to draw your attention to our newest guide, which was created as a companion to this webinar titled Tailor Your Merchant Portfolio, How to Leverage KYC to Find the Right Client Fit. You will also want to download our most popular guide titled Automated KYC Due Diligence, 10 Tips for Getting It Right. Make sure to check those out before the session is over. The recording of the session will also be available within a week on our website. We have some great industry experts lined up to present today. First, we have Stephen Withey. Stephen is a strategic-minded and tenured payments professional with over 15 years of experience within the merchant services industry. He has held several roles within the industry and works with clients all over the globe. Next, we have Matthew Parker. Matt is a 22-year payments industry veteran who for the past 15 years has helped merchant acquirers automate onboarding, underwriting, and KYC business processes. Matt is a co-founder and principal of KYC SiteScan. Thank you so much to both of our speakers. I have a brief legal disclaimer. Please be reminded that the information provided today is not a legal opinion and should not be relied upon as such. The opinions shared are those of the speakers personally. For today's agenda, we'll start with KYC 101, then move on to look at bad actors versus those great merchants who are crown jewels. Then we'll wrap up with how to fix the KYC bottleneck that often slows down the overall merchant underwriting process. Now I'll hand it off to Stephen, who will kick things off.
Well, thank you, Jessica, and thank you all in the audience for joining us today. With the series title From Beginner to Pro, for any true beginners, I want to start with a brief recap of what is KYC. I think we all know what it stands for, Know Your Customer, something you definitely want to do before adding any merchant into your portfolio. Think of it this way, you're spending money to advertise and market with a particular kind of merchant in mind. But similar to the shadows in this picture that don't tell you much about the people, you don't really know much about your applicants. Some may be legitimate, some not. Some may fit your target merchant profile, some may not fit the profile you're looking for. The merchant or the ISO sales rep may have been completely truthful on that application, or they may have left out information, either deliberately or on accident. And they could even be fraudsters looking to purposely fool you into underwriting them. You just don't know until you dig in and research who they are. That is what KYC is all about. getting to know the applicant before boarding. So why do KYC? Well, the answer may be slightly different than you think. The first thought is about protecting against fraud and loss and risk. And many only do KYC because the card brands and banks require you to have to do it or you'll get fined. So it's a stick, it's punitive. If you don't do KYC research, then you get fined. But savvy acquirers know that while, yes, it is required by the card brands, and yes, you want to avoid onboarding criminals, there's actually a big carrot to be had, which is that KYC helps you to quickly identify the merchants who are the best fit for your portfolio. The value of this can't be understated. Whether you're in for the carrot, finding those ideal merchants to build out your portfolio, or whether you're doing KYC just to avoid a card brand fine or reduce chargeback from bad actors, whatever the reason, the KYC work is the same. Research, research, research. Similar to looking for dozens of needles and hundreds of haystacks, bringing all that research together, there are 28 business tasks that the industry has decided should be completed to perform adequate KYC on a merchant. So with that, I'll now turn it over to Matt, who knows the anatomy of a bad actor probably as well as anyone in the industry. He's going to go into detail about the 28 checks, talk about not just the red flags to look for to avoid bad actors, but he'll also go into those exceptionally valuable green flags when you know you're onto a good merchant. Matt, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Stephen. I've been involved in merchant know your customer KYC due diligence for over a decade, and I'm often asked if merchant KYC as a business process is specifically an anti-fraud tool. In fact, this webinar is subtitled Anatomy of a Bad Actor. And I can say from feedback from many customers that I've worked with over the past decade that the answer is a very strong yes. KYC definitely helps find fraudulent merchants, bad actors. Bad actors can be defined really as merchants selling illegal products or actively harming consumers. Examples might be counterfeit goods being sold or misrepresented products, non-delivery of products, atrocious customer service, not following their own refund or return policies, or merchants just actively looking to rip off cardholders by stealing their money and not delivering any product or service at all. And increasingly, merchant processors are bearing the responsibility of protecting cardholders and ensuring the payment system is free from bad actors who prey on consumers. So bad actors are definitely out there, and they're trying to get access to the payment system every day. Some of them are old hands who have been terminated from other merchant acquirers. Others are just getting in. In fact, during the COVID era, we're seeing a lot of new scams around COVID-related items and poor products and non-shipment, non-delivery. So KYC is definitely a frontline business process to try to identify bad actors. However, when you're onboarding merchants, fraudulent merchants tend to be the needle in the haystack. It's generally a very small percentage of your merchant applicants are fraudsters or bad actors. So it's a lot of efforts and cost, frankly, to find these needles in the haystack if you're just using KYC as an anti-fraud tool. Used and done properly, KYC delivers much more than just identifying red flags on merchants and potential fraud. For 100% of the merchants that you're reviewing, and hopefully a significant number you can onboard, the KYC process serves to help identify if the merchant who you're reviewing certainly is a good actor or not, running a proper business that satisfies consumers, but specifically if that business type fits within your company's risk profile and the type of merchants that you process payments for. So KYC properly performed offers many ways to identify if the merchant applicant is a good fit for your company's merchant portfolio. So we'll talk about both bad actor identification and proper merchant fit with your company so that you can get your most out of your KYC investment. And that's what this slide, hopefully this glass slipper and the Cinderella analogy shows regarding merchant fit. So how do you do it? How do you perform KYC? What's involved? It really has 4 different areas. One that's very useful and is not just for identifying bad actors, but also seeing if there's a good fit, green flags, and if a merchant is a good fit for your particular portfolio. For bad actors, reviewing a merchant website, looking online to trusted sources, checking news and information that's available online, that's definitely going to help you identify bad actors if they're selling illegal products or unethical services or products. You want to definitely crawl that merchant's website. You want to look at the social media. You want to go to trusted third-party sources, governmental, non-governmental sources that publish business information that help you understand the business category. So business categorization is important for an understanding of a good actor, merchant, and if it is a fit for your profile. And here's some examples. If your company does not process payments for certain types of businesses, examples of higher risk is travel, the travel industry, pharmaceuticals, gym memberships, CBD products, hemp products, IT services, nutraceutical companies, cosmetic companies making very dubious health claims, and business and collection companies. These are some of the traditional higher risk areas that you may or may not want to process for. Proper KYC will help you determine exactly what those companies are doing to see if not only are they a good actor, but do they fit your profile. And often a company has many different products or services. So general business codes or categories like an MCC code are often very broad and perhaps sometimes misleading. So proper KYC is all about understanding everything a company does that will involve your company processing payments on their behalf. An example of that might be houses of worship like a church or a mosque or a synagogue. You might specialize in that. You might understand the risk of that type of business, and you might welcome that business. You might actively seek that out. However, many houses of worship also do other things, and they might also be processing payments through you. They might be running a school, they might be running daycare centers, they might be running charities. And it's really important as you're onboarding that merchant to understand not just the general thing that they're doing, in this case, house of worship, but all of the things that they're doing. Another example might be in the food service. Let's say you specialize in restaurants. You might want to know that this particular merchant is not just a restaurant, but they also have a bar. They might also have a gift shop. In that gift shop, they're selling tobacco, or they're selling vaping products. And that restaurant might also, and bar might be part of a nightclub or even a strip club. So if you just knew them as a restaurant, you don't understand the full categorization of that business. So understanding what the merchant is selling is one thing. Maybe as important is understanding how they're selling their products or services to see if it's a proper fit for your merchant portfolio. You might specialize in brick and mortar merchants only, or conversely, e-commerce merchants only, or you might have a particular specialty in delayed delivery travel products or services with subscription models, negative option billing, multi-level marketing companies. These require special risk knowledge on how to handle them properly, and you want to welcome the ones that are good actors, and you want to keep the ones that don't fit your risk profile or the specific business model, how they're selling their product. And understanding that company's sales model often requires KYC, which could include a review of their terms of service policy that's disclosed on their merchant's website. It could be located in their shipping or return or refund policy. Nowadays, most of how a company does business is disclosed on the website. So website review is quite important when you're trying to understand business and product categorization, but also how a merchant is selling their products. Business information validation. So this is another category that KYC encompasses. This is less about understanding what a company is doing and if it's a fit, and more trying to see if there's potential fraud going on. Proper KYC is not just validating what the merchant tells you on the merchant application, but it's also uncovering what the merchant applicant might not be disclosing, either intentionally or unintentionally. So examples that very often get left out on the merchant application might be alternative business names or different trade names, doing business as names, different websites. They might not even give you a website. But when we've seen that there's no website revealed on the merchant application, 55% of the time that merchant actually does have a URL. and it's often discovered during the KYC process. That could unintentionally just be left out. It could be laziness on the part of the salesperson or on the applicant, or it could be someone trying to fool you. They don't want you to go to their website and see what they're selling or how they're selling it. Validating phone numbers, business licenses, names of beneficial owners, officers and directors' names. These are all things that hopefully KYC will help you do, but also find and uncover and discover things that they're not telling you about the company. One very common trick that fraudsters try to pull is they usually, it's called corporate identity theft. This is very similar to personal identity theft. It's essentially stealing a legitimate company's information. Much of that information is available online, and making an application for a merchant account using another company's good information, and they look like a good actor, they look like green flags all the way, but it's actually a fraudster. So this particular part of KYC, business information validation and discovery, is particularly useful for identifying bad actors who are trying to get through the underwriting process, pretending to be another company or not disclosing what they're really selling, or alternative websites or alternative addresses, alternative phone numbers, different trade names. So trusted government sources, third-party data helps validate this information. Social media is also very useful for this information. Consumer sentiment. That's another big part of KYC, and increasingly it's very important. In fact, it really does triple duty. Not only does understanding consumer sentiment help keep out fraud, but it also helps you to understand business categorization, because very often when people are talking about a business online, they're talking about specific products or services. So reviewing things like social media, reviews, rankings, complaints that are registered with governmental and non-governmental agencies. These things will help you decide, is this merchant abusing customers, or is this going to be a chargeback nightmare? Does this potentially damage my brand? Does this damage the card brand's brand? Is this going to get me in trouble with my acquiring bank? This is all important to do. So if you specialize in certain high-risk services or products, it's particularly important. One example would be an online IT support service. There's many IT support companies that are legitimate and provide good services, and they have good business practices. They're consumers. However, if you've ever dabbled in the space, you also know there's also a significant number of IT support companies that offer poor services, or frankly are outright fraudulent. Or they're criminals. They're trying to install malware on people's computers and maybe steal their credit card numbers. So it's really important to understand past experience with these companies. Much of that nowadays has migrated to social media, reviews and rankings, and understanding the type of complaints that are being lodged are really important. High-risk companies, especially like companies like billing companies, you're always going to find complaints about billing companies and collections companies, because let's face it, everyone hates the bill collector. When you're doing your KYC, you have to sort of understand the particular risk categorization here, and understand that just because a company has a lot of complaints against it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad actor. Microsoft has thousands of complaints against them, but I bet pretty much everyone on this webinar would love to have Microsoft as a client. Another aspect of consumer sentiment detection, and a big part of KYC, is looking for news and web searches about a company or the persons associated with the company. That will definitely help determine if that company has been identified previously as a bad actor. But conversely, also, if the company has been in business a long time and has done things like charitable work, maybe sponsored the local Little League. And so good news about a company and positive results that you find online can give your underwriters assurance that if the merchant is a solid match for your particular risk profile, that they would be a good client to onboard. News and web searches will also help you understand much more about the business, such as how much they're earning or how many locations they have. All of this helps you identify not just the bad actors, but the green flags, so that you can maybe even prioritize the crown jewels who are applying to you if you have a particularly good opportunity. And then the last part of KYC that I want to just talk about doesn't fall neatly under product detection or company data validation, discovery, or consumer sentiment. It's really these miscellaneous tasks that the industry wants to see you perform when you do your KYC. Things like doing mapping of the business location, maybe Street View as well, to understand, if this is a restaurant or this is a bakery, why did they give you a post office box, or why is this in the middle of a field, or why does this address not even exist? That could be indicative of potential fraud. It could also be that they have alternative business locations they may or may not have told you about. Sanctions list screening, of course, is very important. US OFAC list, if you're in Europe, the EU consolidated sanctions list. These are critical to keep criminals and money launderers, terrorists, drugs, other serious crimes out of the payments ecosystem. And if the merchant is also on an industry exclusion list, such as the MasterCard match list, you're of course going to want to check those as well. So all of these things help you look for red flags, but performing them and not finding any red flags essentially are green flags. And you want to be able to show anyone who's performing audits on you or compliance on you that you did do these checks and that they turned out to be green flags, and it's okay to board this merchant, especially if they fit in your risk profile. So if we summarize, we've seen that KYC doesn't just help screen out bad actors before they can harm consumers and cause problems for you, the merchant processor, such as high chargebacks or damage to your company or fines or loss of an important business relationship. But KYC also helps acquirers decide if a merchant applicant is within the criteria of what you wish to accept in your portfolio. And merchant portfolios increasingly are valued on the quality of their underwriting, of which KYC is a large portion of that process. So KYC is an extremely useful process. I might be biased about it because I've been doing it for a long time, but I believe that most companies, even if it wasn't an industry compliance requirement, would still do it because the costs of it are justified for finding the right fit and also keeping bad actors out of the ecosystem. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot of time. It is costly. If you're performing it manually, it's not easy to scale up. It's sometimes inconsistent. And Stephen is going to talk a little bit about how to get around the manual process, because KYC, if it's done manually, is often the bottleneck in the process, but there are ways to uncork the bottleneck. And Stephen, I'll hand it back to you.
Great, thanks, Matt. Always helpful information. Like Matt mentioned, I'd like to switch gears and talk a little bit about how many people today are still doing KYC manually and how it can be automated. If you're currently doing your KYC manually, you know what an effort it is, sort of like picking fruit by hand. It's generally a very slow process, arguably the slowest part of merchant underwriting. The fact of the matter is that data gathering ends up being a huge bottleneck, like Matt mentioned. Underwriters who do their own KYC research spend roughly 90% of their time aggregating the data they need in order to review a merchant, and just 10% of their time analyzing the data and making underwriting decisions. At the risk of repeating some of what Matt just covered, it's useful to remember that KYC involves a long list of tasks. So if you're doing this manually, you must review the merchant's website and take a representative sample of what they're selling, find, read, and review policy disclosures, go out to the government websites and look up Secretary of State or governmental jurisdictions, search Google for customer reviews, and ideally check all social media platforms, do OFAC checking and other watch lists, and that's just a sampling. The point, of course, is that doing this manually is very time consuming and doesn't scale well. It's essentially picking the entire orchard by hand. But there's a solution that's vastly easier than you think. The answer is automating your KYC data gathering. If you go with a SaaS model, then it can be surprisingly quick and easy to implement and bring big benefits. To start with, your team will thank you. And as I just talked about, KYC research is massively time consuming, not to mention mentally challenging chore. Automation frees up your analysts from the grunt work of searching for, finding, and collecting the raw source data. By freeing them up to focus on underwriting, you save costs. It's much cheaper to implement a SaaS automation solution than to pay people to sit there all day searching the web. And then you can redirect those highly skilled underwriters to high value analysis and decision making to build your merchant portfolio, increasing your revenue. Gaining accuracy is frankly all about the technology. Machines are simply better suited to do this kind of work. Humans get tired at the end of the day, inaccuracies slip in, things may get overlooked. With automation, that simply doesn't happen. You get fully complete KYC data in a matter of minutes, 24/7, 365, and the data is accurate. And by accurate, you increase compliance. The last benefit listed on the slide is something we didn't really talk about today. The nice thing is that KYC automation can enable and pair seamlessly with speeding up the underwriting process, with easy to implement technology with a fast return on investment. I'll close by bringing us back to the point about ROI. But first, the reality is that even small or medium merchant providers can have fast ROI, but if you're a bigger shop, say doing over 200 applications a month, then you can't afford to not automate this process. In fact, the next webinar in the series will be all about ROI and how the numbers work. With that, I'll turn it over to Jessica, who can tell you more about the next webinar and other resources. Jess?
Thank you, Stephen and Matt, for kicking off our summer series. As Stephen just mentioned, the second webinar is Automated KYC, ROI You Can't Afford to Ignore, and will air on August 5th. To sign up, visit our webinars page at www.g2llc.com/webinars. If you'd like to learn more, please visit the resources tab on the G2 website. For your convenience, we've shared that link in the chat box of your GoToWebinar panel. This concludes our session for today. If we did not have time to address your questions during the webinar, we will be reaching out to follow up with you individually. If you have additional questions or comments, please email us at info@g2llc.com or connect with us on LinkedIn. Again, a big thank you to our speakers and to those of you who joined our session. Have a great rest of your day.